Hello friends, my name is Diane and today I'm going to be walking you through how to draw a human eye using chalk pastel. Thank you so much for joining me and let's get started. All right, so before we get into the actual drawing, I'm just going to orient you to the materials you'll need for this little class. You'll need a pencil for drawing, a piece of paper to draw on. You'll need a printout of the image we're going to work from. We're only going to be doing the eye here as a way of exploring how to do a human eye in chalk pastel. But this image is by Johannes Vermeer. It's Girl with a Pearl Earring, painted in 1665, oil on canvas. You'll see that information printed below on the bottom of your screen. So you can just pause the video, take down the information, internet search the video, internet search the image, print it out, and have it ready for you to copy. If possible, I would suggest enlarging or zooming in on the eye when you print it out, so it's a little bit easier to see, and probably having just a regular image as well is nice to be able to see the cohesive effect of everything. So once you have all that, we're going to use our pencil and just make a very simple drawing of the eye. It does not have to be perfect. We are not doing this for drawing accuracy, although you can be as accurate as you want, and I'll show you how to be accurate, but really this is a color study, so we'll proceed with that in mind. So a good way to figure out the size and size of the eye is just measuring using your pencil tip. You can put it on the corner of the eye and your thumbnail on the opposite corner. And you can see how big it is compared to everything else. So if I turn it on its head, I can see the length of the eye is about the same as the height from the top of the lid to the very bottom shadow here. So I'm just keeping that in my mind as I proceed. And I'm going to see how tall the eye is compared to how wide to draw my first mark. So I'm noticing that it goes across exactly twice. So what I want to do is make up how big I want the eye to be. Let's say I want it to be this big. And I'm going to find where about half of that is. And then I know that's the height of the eye itself, from bottom of the top lid to top of the bottom lid. And the top lid, if you'll notice the shape of the eye, the highest point is actually closer to the left and the lowest point of the bottom lid is closer to the right. So it's not like a lemon shape. It's like very much higher on the inside of the eyelid and lower on the outside. So, oh, and the other thing to notice is because she's looking at us at an angle, the inside corner of the eye is higher than the bottom. So if you look at that and kind of use your pencil as a tool to see the direction it's pointing, you can move it over and just, as it happens, I put my marks in a good location to create that angle, but you don't want to go straight across. So just make your marks a little offset in that regard. And then you can just copy it. So it's going to go in a little bit on the left here. I'm going to zoom in so you can see this better. In a little bit on the left and then up pretty quickly so it touches that high point, and then lower to the right, and here it's pretty round. And as I mentioned, this is as low as we want to go, but the lowest point is going to be right about here, and then it's going to go up. Corner of the eye comes in at the bottom there and then descends down, something like that. Like I said, it doesn't have to be exact. I'm going to get rid of my marks, don't want those anymore. And I'm actually going to lightly erase my pencil line as well because I want it to be very faint. I don't want my pencil line to show through the pastel in the final product, so all you need is a presence of it there. And then for the lid, I'm just going to eyeball it, pun intended. It's going to start on the left here very thin, go up and be very full quite suddenly. And just keeping in mind that I want the height of the full eye to be about the same as the length here. In fact, I could just do this. Oh, that's a little bit, yeah. So I want my eyelid to be higher there, and the bottom of my eyeshadow would be about right there. So I'm glad I did that because it showed me that I was making the lid too thin. It's going to kind of come back here and be a little bit flatter on this side. Not that flat though. You just kind of keep messing with it until you feel like you've gotten it right. Or approximately right. And this, I'm going to erase that eventually because that's actually the bottom of this shadow. But it helps me to see how thick the bottom lid should be. So it looks like it's going to be about there, about halfway between here and here. And then I'm going to get rid of this mark. The iris of the eye, the width of that is just about halfway across as well, just a tad shy of halfway across. So if I were to make it, that looks about right, stick out to there, that looks right. And we want it to be a really perfect circle because that's what irises are. So I'm going to do this, and it looks like it goes below the lid there. So if I did that and that and that, those would be the four points of my circle. And you don't have to do this, but it helps your circle to be really exact if you can see the whole thing. So you can just draw the entire circle. Of course, the parts you're going to erase don't need to be that precise. In fact, I'm not even going to finish that because I'm going to erase it. But it just helps me to see, yeah, I did make that really round. So then I can erase this part. And I feel like the top edge needs to be a little higher right there going up under that lid. I'm just looking at it now, kind of adjusting it per what I see in the reference picture. And then we can make just a little stroke here where the pink part's gonna be. And that looks pretty good. I'm not going to bother drawing in the pupil because that's not perfectly round. It's just a darkened area in the center, so we'll just eyeball that when we get there. Again, pun intended. So there's our eye, and now we can get onto the color. So let me zoom back out here. As you can see, I have a very large selection of pastels. If you have something like that, that's great. If you don't, even if you have just a very limited palette of 12 or 24 pastels, you can do this class. You're just going to be layering colors to create other ones. For example, if I'm using this kind of yellowy brown color, you would put a little bit of yellow and brown and white and possibly a little bit of orange together and blend them together to create this. So it is more of a multi-step process, but it's doable. So don't worry if you don't have a huge amount of colors. So with that being said, we'll get on to the coloring. The first thing we're going to do is put a layer of an off-white on the whole thing, or excuse me, all the skin area, not the eye itself, as a base. So I've got this ivory color, and I'm just going to color all around. As a first layer, trying to keep the color out of the eye itself by using kind of a corner of the pastel as I get up close to it. But then as I move away, I can color a little more vigorously and not care about edges and things. Let me go down a little more so we can get some real skin in there. And it does create dust, chalk pastel. So if you have a trash can nearby, just shake it into the trash can, or you can blow it off, either way. And then use your finger and just rub it in. And try around the eye, try to use the edge of your finger so that you don't get the yellowy color into the eye if possible. But if you do, it's so light you don't even really need to erase it. It'll just disappear as we proceed with the class. So that's our first layer, and then we're going to go in and add some pink, some of this sort of blushy part around the eye. So for that, I'm going to find kind of a rosy, dusty pink, a grayish pink, and just put it where I see it, definitely under the eye here. Over the top of the brow a little bit, so a little higher. Kind of goes up into the forehead, but I didn't even put any white up there, so I'm not going to worry about that. And definitely on the lid itself, the upper lid, it's pink. And I'll let it just kind of fade off into the darker area there. Blow off the dust. And then I think I'm going to rub it in at this point. You could choose to not like layer more colors and rub in later. It really doesn't matter. I'm just doing this because I feel like it. I want to have it more complete before I move on. So rubbing in the pink, I'm going to get it kind of blended. I'm pushing pretty hard right now. I'm blending it into the light below the eye there. And then we're going to start putting on some rudimentary shadows. So I'm going to start with this greenish color, kind of an olivey green for around the nose, a little bit under the eye. I'm going to just color kind of a thick band of color right here. That's the shadow from the nose, and it curves up into that pink I just put on over the eyelid, and it goes right into the crease of the eyelid as well. And then it's pretty thick there, not thick as in a lot of color, just thick as in a thick band. And then it sort of fades off right about here. So I'm going to just put a little bit into the crease and let it fade. And then I'm also going to put some right underneath the eye on the right. Kind of a triangle shape, a rounded triangle shape. And again, I'm going to blend because I want to. If I hadn't blended the pink, I could do it now as I'm blending the green, kind of blend them together. I guess another advantage of blending as you go is you can kind of see the layers as they build up more, versus if you put a bunch of colors in and then blend, sometimes you just end up having to go back and do a little bit more, sometimes not. That's why I say it doesn't really matter. So I'm using the edge of my finger here to keep that edge sharp against the bottom of the eye. And from there, I'm going to add some brown to darken. Oh, you know what? I should have put some green here, this shadow that kind of comes into the corner of the eye. Even though it's not green, it does look brown. It has a greenish sort of presence to it. So I'm just going to put that in as a first layer there. And going over the cheekbone. And here I don't even have any white, so you can see what'll happen when I blend that area, when there's no white as a base. So you can see it's just more crumbly. It's not nearly as smooth and creamy when you don't have the white down as a base. But that's fine. This is, again, just a first pass. Now looking at it, I feel like I want to put some pink here. Just missed that part before. And I have a little bit of green left on my finger, which I want because I want the pink and the green to kind of join together right there. But if I didn't want it, I would just wipe it off on my rag. I'm not sure if I mentioned it's a good idea to have a rag also so that you can wipe off dirty fingers as you need them. Or in my case, I just wear art pants and wipe it on my pants. That's fine too. A little bit more green. Sorry, I'm getting distracted talking about dirty fingers. On a little bit more green on the outside edge of the eyelid. And I'm going to use the edge of my finger to blend that up into the lid itself. And now I'm going to go back and get some brown. So I'm just going to pick out kind of a warm brown, like a orange, a little bit of a reddish orangey presence to it. And I'll go in and really darken these shadows, but I'm not going all the way to the edge where the green is because I do want that green to show a little bit, kind of peeking out. Oh, I wanted to put more pink here too. I'll go back and do that in a minute. So that's the main big shadow there. And then this is going to kind of just turn right into the eye. So the brown is going to curve under here and go over the lid in a pretty definitive way on the right. And then on the bottom edge of the lid as well, blow off the dust. And those will sort of meet in the middle. So I'm going to color very lightly between them with the same color to encourage them to blend a little bit. But trying not to color so dark that they look the same color as the sort of outline I did around the lid. I'm also going to add some brown into this shadow, which will both darken it a little bit and dull it a little bit so it's not quite as green. And a little bit right here on the inside edge of the lid. Going up a little bit towards the eyebrow, and then this will curve over a little also, because there is a hint of light right between the top of the shadow and the top of the lid. So now I'm going to blend it, blowing off any excess dust, really softening this shadow, so I'm kind of blending over the line, straddling my finger between the shadow and the peachy part. But here, I want the opposite. I want that to stay very sharp, so I'm using the edge of my finger to blend. Wipe it off and go back and go the other direction. So I'm really encouraging that brown to just transition gradually into the green there. For this, I'm going to use my pinky because it's smaller, and try to use just the edge of my finger on the edges if possible. If your finger is too big to get in there, don't worry about it. Just blend the best you can, and then you can come back at it with color. For example, here I want to put a little more pink here anyway. If I over blended that, I could just kind of take the pink and cut back into it. Oh, and I wanted to put more pink here, some pink here, and kind of make that go into the pink on the cheek. And then I'm going to blend in big circles to really get that to smear. And I'm going to keep blending right into the brown. Again, I'm making a softer shadow like I did here, so I'm straddling the shadow with my finger rather than using an edge. But here, I want it to be pretty sharp against that bottom lid, so I'm using the edge. And I'm going to take that little bit of brown and just smear it right into the lid there. So that's pretty good base for the skin. We can come back and do a little bit more as needed. For right now, we're going to move on to the eye. So we're going to go back with the white, just plain white this time, not the off-white. And we'll color in the white part of the eye as a base. And this you want to do fairly solidly. So really outline, get the edges really crisp, and then color very solid into the center. And that creates a lot of dust, so I'm going to shake that off into the garbage can. And then make sure I have a pretty darn clean finger and go back and blend it with my finger to get it really smooth, keeping the edge sharp. Don't worry about it at all if you get it into the iris, because you're going to color that with a much darker color. So you don't need to even erase. And now we can get onto the shadow in the eye. So we're going to use the gray, a light gray, and just put a little tiny hint of it at the base of the eye. Very lightly, but sharp at the bottom. And then use the white to blend it. So that will make the gray quite a bit lighter and very soft, because we definitely don't want it that dark. So we've got something like that, and we'll use the light pink again. Actually, we're going to use a slightly purplier pink. The other one I used was more of an orangey pink. This one has a little bit more purple in it for the corner of the eye. Just the base, using a corner to keep it sharp. And then a really dark red, kind of a reddish brown, to outline that part. I'm using a corner of the pastel. That'll be way too dark to begin with, but don't worry, we're going to blend it. And then kind of pulling down about a half line from the top to the bottom into that pink part. And then we'll go back with the original pink and sort of dab around inside to smear the dark red into the light pink. And also kind of force it to blend up under the corner of the eye, under the eyelid there. And I've got a little excess there, so I'm just going to use my finger to lightly dab it and kind of encourage it to soften next to the skin. I'm also going to take the skin color again, the pink, because I kind of lost the light around the corner of the eye, and put that back in right here, now that I've got the corner of the eye colored in. and then use my finger to dab that into the olive as well. And that'll really help the corner of the eye to look like it's kind of sitting inside the face. Further, now we can move on to the iris. So for that, we're going to use a kind of darker gray for the main color. And you can color that in. Just leave a little bit of a space on the left side for that bright highlight. Otherwise, you can color pretty solidly with this gray. Just keep the edge of the iris very, very sharp by using a corner of the pastel. Oops, leapt a little bit there. Don't worry about the fact that there's that little light glow in the iris on the right side. We're going to put that in after we're done putting the gray. So for right now, you can just color pretty solid with the gray. And leave, it doesn't really matter if you leave a space for the pupil or not, but I did because I didn't want to spend the time doing it. Oh, whoops, we need to blend first. So use your finger, blend that gray. Do the best you can to keep the edges sharp, but we're getting tiny now, so don't worry if you accidentally get a little into the lid or something else. We'll fix that in a minute. And then you can use the really dark gray to fill in the pupil. And we will enhance that with some true black as well. But right now, I'm using a very dark gray. I don't like to use true black too often because I feel like it deadens things. So anytime you can use a dark gray or a dark purple, dark blue, dark green, something as a substitute, do that. You will be happy you did. It will add more life to your work. So we're also going to put a thick dark outline underneath the lid. That's the shadow of the lid on the iris. And we're also going to outline the iris with the dark gray in a thick dark line, getting a little thinner on the right here. And then kind of bringing it down on the top left. And even right next to that white highlight, there's a teeny hint of a line, black line. So I'm just going to put that in there. And then I'm going to go back with the gray and blend that black. And I'm going to do it kind of in circles to encourage the black to spread, or the dark gray, to spread into the iris a little bit. So I'm using a corner of the pastel, coloring in circles. And that also just naturally mimics the texture of an iris. Further, we can, oh, I should do the light first. So the light in the eye you can get with the white. Just put kind of a thick area of white right here on the right side, and then just dab it with your finger to force it to blend into the iris. And you can also color white into that bright highlight. And then this is where we'll go in with the true black to just put a big kind of shape in the center of the pupil and pull a little bit of color to the top and to the bottom. I need to go a little bit bigger with that, it looks like. Get rid of all the dust. And then I'll use my light gray to blend it. I don't want to use my finger because my finger will pull off too much color and my finger is too big for this. You'll notice in this painting the pupil does not have a definitively sharp edge, so it's fine to just kind of soften it into the rest of the eye. So we've got the main stuff down. Now it's time for touching up. So like crumbly stuff that happened, you can go back with the skin color. In this case, I'm going to use the light, even the white ivory color I used to begin with, even though it's really too light for that area, just as a way to kind of clean it up a little bit. And then I'm going to go back with some of this lighter brown to adjust the color. And I'll use a finger to soften it, being very careful against the edge of the iris. For the inside of the iris where it touches the eye, it's going to be a little bit soft anyway, so just use the corner of your white and very carefully go around. Try to keep the very round shape and sort of rub back and forth to soften it against the white part of the eye really well. I also feel like there's a hint of a yellowiness to the white part of the eye that I didn't notice before, so I'm going to put a little bit of this ivory color over the top of the white. Not over the whole part, but just over the kind of the horseshoe shape on the left. And that'll help to round off the eye a little bit, or make it look really round in the socket. On the top edge, we're going to go back with this lighter brown and put in a lash line. So just kind of outline right there. And I'm also going to use it to clean up any black that accidentally got inside the eyelid here. Use my finger once to blend it. Oops, and that's kind of smeared some color up into it, but that's fine. That actually did me a favor because I needed to dull down that eyelid anyway. And on that note, if you need to dull something down, you can kind of rub your finger in a neutral area and then use it to adjust the color in another area. And I feel like this part needs to be a little darker too. My browns have gotten severely blended out, so I'm going to go back and really emphasize those. And blend them in. And you can kind of just look around at your picture at this point and decide what else needs to be done. Is something too pink? Is it too gray? Is it too soft? Does it need to be sharpened? Or maybe it's too sharp and needs to be softened. So now that you've got all your colors laid in and blended and you've got, you know, kind of your basic thing done, you can do what I did and just say, oh, my brown needs to be darker or what have you, whatever needs to happen. And you can just feel free to play until you're happy with it. Hopefully you've gained enough skills from taking this short class to continue to work your picture to your heart's delight. And on that note, I'm going to thank you so much for joining me today and wish you a beautiful rest of your day.